I have to just offer my excuses beforehand that I'm probably about to sneeze 60 times this morning. I've just been outside and this beautiful weather is stunning, but it's certainly flared up my hay fever. So I apologise for that in advance. My name's Linda Lacey. I'm the Program Development Manager here at Tourism Industry Council. If I haven't met you, it's lovely to have you all come in, join us this morning. Just like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar today from Tartanya on the lands of the Kaurna people. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and certainly I and everyone here at TICSA celebrates the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing connections to the land and waters of South Australia. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you are joining us from today. Our In Conversation series are short webinars that are delivered as part of our business development program to provide you as tourism operators with insights and knowledge and advice that can help you with your business planning and your operations. These In Conversations are really kind of informal conversations by virtue of the name. Very much me asking questions of our guests that we've got here today. We invite questions from you guys as well, and there's certainly a chat function that you can use that, or you can put up your hand as well. We'll have some time at the end too where you can jump in and ask a question on camera if you don't want to use the chat function. Please keep your microphone on mute until we get to that point though, just so that we don't get some of that background noise coming through. If you haven't already seen, we are recording today's session. So if you want to watch back for some more detail later on, or you need to, drop out to get back into your business, then you can certainly catch up and that will be sent out to everyone who's registered. That's pretty much it for sort of the housekeeping kind of rules. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome one of our very valued partners, Peter from P4B Solar. And I always say PB4, so just when I say PB4 now, just know I'm talking P4B. Peter's certainly one of the sort of the favourites around the office, just for his engaging and warm personality, and we really love talking with him and bringing him in and sharing his advice out to industry on solar. And, understanding and embracing environmental sustainable practices are actually becoming really integral to doing business. And certainly as we look at the ongoing evolution and need for resilience of businesses in what is a changing climate that we're all facing, economic climate, environmental climate, all of those sorts of challenges that are confronting us as businesses, but also too as the industry more broadly. Integration of solar power can not only shape the future of your business, but can also pave the way for a more environmentally conscious and economically viable industry. And we also know that travellers today are really looking for businesses with some kind of environmental or sustainability credential. And while solar power has been around in varying capacities for decades, and I did a bit of research, and the old solar hot water system came out in the 1970s. So it's the idea of solar to power stuff has been a part of our lives and our vernacular around energy for quite some time. It actually doesn't mean that understanding and implementing solar has become any easier to understand or to do. But fortunately, we've got Peter, the Managing Director of P4B Solar, who is an expert, not just in solar, but also too from an incredible background around finance and accounting. So really understands the impacts and benefits of solar on individual businesses. And he's going to help break down some of those myths and those big question marks that we have, and help you to start thinking about introducing solar to your business, or if you already have solar within your business, how you could actually leverage it for better outcomes. So welcome, Peter. If we could just start by you giving a little bit of a story, a bit of background to yourself and also to P4B Solar.
Thanks, Linda. As you mentioned, I initially was an accountant, so I guess I came to this industry almost by accident. A friend of mine was working for a solar company. They wanted somebody with my background to prepare a commercial presentation process to handle government grant applications. I didn't know a thing about solar, except I'd heard about probably what you've heard about, panels on the roof. But I really enjoyed it. It's a feel-good industry, certainly beats selling cigarettes. And over time, as I got to understand more about the industry, I'll be polite and say that I didn't like the ethics of the company I was working for. So I started my own. We take a view that we're here to look after people long term. As you mentioned in our conversation before we started, that our industry doesn't have a very good name, and we're doing our best to correct that.
Sorry, just it's
Mhm.
it's been a good morning already. I apologise, everyone. So let's get straight to the questions, Peter. Why is it important for businesses in tourism to switch to solar?
Well, the two main reasons. Number one, it's going to save you money. As an accountant, I would say anyone who's not looking to save money in their business doesn't have a right perspective for running it. But number two is to reduce your carbon emissions. There is more and more pressure coming out for people to reduce. Australia is behind in the world stage as far as reducing carbon emissions. We see countries like England where their top companies have to have a program to reduce their emissions, and they therefore pass that down onto anyone they're dealing with. So you might just be in fact, I was talking to Eamon at the conference, the TIXA conference, and he was telling me about a hotel who had a major client who had their people flying in and out of Adelaide all the time, staying in his accommodation. And this company asked that particular hotel what they were doing about reducing their emissions. And they said, oh, we're thinking about it, but we haven't done anything. And they said, sorry, we can't deal with you anymore. We are going to see more of that. There's no doubt. So they're the two big reasons.
Yeah, and I think, and we'll probably delve into that a little bit more, but that external demand from who your customer is probably really going to start shifting our industry to really start. You can no longer start to avoid some of these, these initiatives, and that's certainly why it's really great to have you here today, because I think solar is probably one of the first ones that people can do if they're not doing it already, and it's not as scary as it can sound, and certainly that trust thing. Which we talked about, solar does have a challenging name. There was lots of companies that came out, and working out who to go with and what their product is certainly a roadblock. And talking about roadblocks, on that one, but also other roadblocks, what do you think are some of the roadblocks that are stopping tourism businesses from investing in solar?
Cost is certainly the first one. There's no doubt about that. And I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. People think that getting finance to buy a solar system is difficult. It's not. There's a number of companies that have set up that lend specifically for solar. Westpac was one of the early ones, and they had the philosophy that if a company is trading well, so their record is clear, then they're only going to be better off with solar in their business. That came from Westpac. The other things that for people, I guess, in terms of what they're going to do is, the simple one, where to start. It's easy for someone like me. I've been doing it for 12 years. But even once they get to that, it's then who do I deal with? Our industry, as I've said, doesn't have a good name. How do we find someone we can trust? And then the final question, obviously, is the one about finance. I deal with a large number of industries. I've done a lot of work with wine industry, tourism-related industries, that sort of thing. And they're industries that have a reasonable demand on their capital expenditure. Now, when something comes up, if it's key to the operation of your business, then that's going to get the money. Solar is an optional thing that people do. They've got electricity. It's just an optional thing to save some money. So it is how will we do it without interfering with our capex? And that's where these finance companies help.
Yeah. So knowing where to start, knowing how to pay for it, and knowing who you can go to for to help you get the outcome that you want. There's some of those barriers that people need to overcome. And sort of, I guess, connected to that too, what are like some of the misconceptions about solar? Like, what do you hear people when you have those conversations around, oh, I don't have solar because, like, what are those misconceptions?
One that comes up a bit, businesses where there are tenants and
Hmm.
they have this, seem to think it's the landlord's responsibility to put the solar system on. They're a bit concerned that if they put a solar system on, it's attached to the building, it becomes a fixture, therefore it's the landlord's property. Of those things, one, it's not the landlord's responsibility. If you're paying the electricity bill, it's up to you to do whatever you can to reduce your cost of electricity and to reduce your emissions. If you're concerned about ownership at the end, and this is something a lot of people don't realise, is that when you want to put the solar system on, you have to go to your landlord. So you ask the landlord, can I put a solar system on the roof? And then that'll often come around to the structural integrity. So we get over that pretty quickly. And so the landlord has to consent. When you ask for the consent, you ask for what's called a landlord waiver. Now that's important. Ask for a landlord waiver to say that the solar system will belong to the tenant. That means that at the end of the tenancy, if you leave the building, one, you can take it with you, or what happens more often is that they sell it to the landlord or the next incoming tenant. So get that landlord waiver, and it certainly is. It's very common. I'd say 70% of my clients are tenants, and I've got one that I can think of where the landlord just said he doesn't want anything on the roof, which is an interesting philosophy in today's world.
That is a very interesting philosophy, and certainly as a property owner, it throws in, if we talk about sustainability of businesses, then if you're not letting as a property owner, you have to think about your sustainability as a landlord as well in that case. And that's really interesting. I didn't realize that because I think that would be a common fear for businesses. Many of our businesses are renting properties. That fear of, I don't own the property, I can't put the solar panels on there because it is a significant cost, and then that's, what if something happens? I didn't realize you could take them off, take them to your next premises.
I normally try and sell it to the landlord or incoming tenant.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that again, another thing that's often overlooked is that if your business has got a goodwill value, the goodwill value of businesses, and I can say this as an account, is generally a multiple of your profit. And that can be 3, 5, sometimes even more. So if you're saying your business is worth, take it simple, three times whatever the profit is. Okay. If you say whatever you say when your electricity bill goes straight to your bottom line and is added to the value of your business for when you ultimately sell it. And quite often, in most cases, that will actually be whatever the cost of the system was. So whatever that system costs you has been added to the value of your business anyway.
Yeah. That's one of the benefits of solar, and that's our next question: is how can solar energy benefit businesses?
Well, I guess number one, going to save you money. 2, increases the goodwill value of your business, as I just said. But number 3, we're starting to see more businesses who are promoting the fact that they are doing something about reducing their carbon emissions. Now, the technology that we use, you could actually put a screen up in your reception area, which will say how much carbon you offset, and it's there saying this is what we're doing. And it is, again, more people starting to adopt that. They want to advertise what they're doing. It's a feel-good thing about your business.
That's a really important point, isn't it? Because I think the consumer nowadays is getting much more savvy. We're getting a lot of education around greenwashing. And when we hear companies say, we do X, we actually now are saying, well, what does that mean? I want to understand what that looks like. So the fact that you've got a tool that just says, not just that we have solar panels, but you can demonstrate what that consumption is. And no doubt that's also really handy for if you're applying for grant applications and so on as well, that you can actually demonstrate what your shift to your reduction in energy consumption has been since you've put those solar panels on. So the technical stuff can sometimes feel like I don't need to know that, but that can actually be the biggest benefit, no doubt, to your business, particularly when we're talking about funding opportunities, but also to really smart and switched on consumers. Our next question, Peter, is, and this comes back to, a lot of that stuff around cost and a lot of those sorts of roadblocks. Are there any government incentives? And obviously, because, we do think that we're all kind of getting pushed into this space in many ways, with fossil fuel reduction becoming really important, gas being, now in Victoria, you cannot build a new property and have gas installed into that property. So it kind of feels like everything's pointing in this direction to get us off some kind of a non-renewable grid. So what government incentives or policies are there that support solar investments for businesses?
Well, the most direct one is the solar rebate. The solar systems up to 100 kilowatts get a rebate from the government through the Clean Energy Regulator. The solar company installing your system should claim that for you. They're called small-scale technology certificates, or some people call them STCs. It's a pro rata, so it reduces on the 1st of January every year. So at the moment, a 100 kilowatt system will get 1,105 STCs, and they are then traded in a marketplace. It's a little bit like the share market, but the price doesn't vary much at all. The current price is sort of around $38, $39. So your system, if you had a 30 kilowatt system you were putting on, then you'll get 0.3, because a 30 is 0.3 of 100. You'll get 0.3 of 1,105 STCs. So that's 33. It's about 33 STCs you get at the current rate of, say, $39.
Yeah. And so 100 kilowatt, is that what does that look like? In my mind, is that something that's massive, or is that a big system? Is that a standard? Where does that fall on, in terms of trying to understand if that's something that you can do?
Yeah, 100 kilowatts is common, very common. But that size system would be more someone who has got significant refrigeration, air conditioning, so hotels, certainly. We've just designed one for the guys at La Loft, Tonsley, a new hotel in Tonsley Centre. So that's if you had an operation where you had some significant refrigeration in there, a hotel would be a classic for that. Wineries in the past. So it can vary quite a bit depending on what you're doing, and that's where it's important to know what your consumption is, which is the question or something I was going to bring up earlier.
Yep. So consumption is helping. Consumption, I'm going a bit off track now in terms of consumption, because you've talked about it, because I think people really want to understand, how do I know how big I need? And it's good to hear that description of 100 kilowatts, because, in my mind, that, when we were talking, a lot of people get their sense of a solar around the conversation that happens at a home level. And so they, we're talking 8 and 12 kilowatts. So then when you talk 100, it feels like that's powering a car factory. But 100 kilowatt is actually, it's not, this exorbitant kind of system. It's actually kind of the point that many tourism businesses, because the La Loft hotel that you talked about, that's not a massive hotel. We're not talking hundreds and hundreds of rooms there. That's actually a medium-sized business in many instances. So it's that accessibility point. So consumption, how do you work out your consumption?
Consumption, with your electricity is recorded and goes through SA Power Networks. So when one of the first things we do, if someone comes to me and says, I'm interested in a solar system for my business or my home, I'd say, can you send me electricity bill? With that, I can get your consumption data from SA Power Networks. Now, if you have up-to-date metering, which is the digital metering, we should have your half-hourly consumption going back, say, 12 months. So what we can look at is what you're using day and night. We break it down to the different parts of the day. We look at what's happening with weekdays and weekends. In the tourism business, it's highly likely you're going to be operating on weekends as well as during the week. If there are aspects of your business that vary, on a weekend, there probably might be part of your business that isn't operating, so your power consumption is less, or it might be more. So we can look at all of those things. We've got our own program for doing the analysis. There are proprietary programs out there, and the best I could say is that's what they are. We designed, because we found there were shortfalls in a number of those programs, we designed our own, which it looks at what happens every day over the past 12 months. There are other programs we have where we can get the projected solar output. That's just based on historical data for where you are. You know, solar output varies quite substantially. Like between Adelaide and Darwin, it's a massive difference. But even between Adelaide and, say, the Adelaide-Stirling area, there is a difference in solar output. So we look at those. The further north you go, again, there's a difference. So we look at what's happening for that area and then map that against your consumption.
Yep. Okay. So consumption, and our next question, I guess, is around your top tips for businesses that are considering it's their first solar investment. So understanding consumption is obviously one of those tips, and that's something you guys can help with. What are your other top tips if I'm thinking about solar? What's the I pick up the phone to you. What's that first kind of, this is what you need to do?
Well, the electricity bill was the first bit, because when we get that, we say, okay, that's what we're looking at. When we're designing the solar system you've got to get a system of best fit. You're not going to have a solar system that's going to do what you want it to do when you want to do it. The output of a solar system varies massively between January and June. And if you had a business, say you had a business in the Adelaide foothills is a classic, right? Something we looked at recently up there, where their consumption was actually higher in winter than it is in summer, because it is colder in the hills than it is down in the plains. So we're trying to find what's going to work best for them.
Yep. And it sounds like, what I think I love, and I think, and I talked about, just my own sort of confusion around solar, and, through working with you guys, and that kind of level of, the trust that's really important to entering the solar journey. And it sounds like, P4B really sounds like you guys are a bit of a coach. You're not just there to sell a product, you're actually there to help a business understand what's best and what's most appropriate, and to also how to take advantage of the opportunity that solar presents. What resources does P4B Solar offer to assist tourism businesses in making informed decisions about their solar investment?
The full analysis of what their consumption is. Mm-hmm. I think that's the start. That old saying of what you pay for is what you get. First thing I say to people is, please remember that. If you're looking for a cheap system, we're not the company for you. We have a pretty good name, and I'm often have people say to me, look, I'd like to deal with you, but really I'm only prepared to spend X dollars. And I point out, from one, we can help with finance if that's an issue, but two, I just won't do cheap. I've had to replace too many systems. Had two businesses last year that threw away 100 kilowatt systems. But when I say that, people say, no, that wouldn't. I can tell you they'd had problems with them for a period, and it got to a point where they just said, right, tuck it off and throw it away. And I see that too often. You want what you pay for, what you get. Please, I've probably said it 3 times now. It is just so true. Our business is the epitome of it. One of the things about what we do is that technology we recommend, and a lot of solar companies don't like this technology. We can see what the system is doing down to the panel. And you can too. You can have it on your phone, you can have it on your laptop. You could be on a holiday in Bali or the other side of the world. You can still see what your system is doing. So that's number one, we can see. Number two is that if there's a problem with your system, they tell me. I have in their software, they have what I've got all of my systems, and then separate to that, there's a separate heading called alerts. And under that are all the systems have got a problem of some sort. And quite often you won't know. We had one client who asked us to go and have a look at an existing system they had, because the company who put it in had given them a report saying everything was fine, charged them $2,500 for the report. And they asked us to go and have a look. And we went down there, and 20% of the system, one 20 kilowatt inverter on a 100 kilowatt system, wasn't working and had been faulty for at least 3 years. I got a friend where 2/3 of her system wasn't working, where she was up in Crystal Brook, and we went up to stay with her. She said, "Look, my bills are going up. I wonder what's going on." But we went out and looked, and we said, "Well, it was no one's fault. It was just Mother Nature, but 2/3 of it weren't working." With our technology, you'll know and we'll know. I would say in 95% of cases, I actually ring the client to say there's such and such a fault. And that's what we do. We check on it every week, at least once a week, we check on those alerts. If it's serious, I actually get something comes to my phone and says, such and such a system, there's an inverter not working.
Yeah.
We've had them, lightning strikes is a good one for messing things up.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, I think that's probably real reassurance, because, you know, like, the world is changing, and I think the idea of convenience being the defining characteristics of the decisions that we make in terms of, oh, that's easy, it's a set and forget, I don't have to worry about it. We know that that's changing across a whole different sort of platform, you know, particularly around the sustainability approach, you know, even the rise of electric vehicles, for example, that will change, and in a way will go back to a different type of travel. It's not the fast, swift kind of travel that we've had previously because of that recharge thing. So with solar energy, we're so used to, you know, a line comes off of the grid outside, it connects into my house. I worry when I turn the light on and it doesn't turn on. Whereas with solar, it sounds like you've really got to be an active kind of consumer of your product and really understand what's going on to know that your system's working well for you and how to get the most out of it. And what you guys do is you actually, you break it down, you provide everyone with the tools, but also the support. So it's not a set and forget, and it's not a thing that comes back to really confront you when it's a crisis point, that you're actively engaged in your solar panels and power, and that you provide the tools to make that much more accessible and reassuring for businesses through all of that tech on the phone, on the computer. No doubt there's probably people that get really addicted. I could just see my partner getting really addicted to our solar you know, like that technical data, because it is really important and really does help you make better business decisions. We've got some questions from some people who've joined us today. We've had some questions that have been added into the registration, so I'm just going to sort of, you know, go through those, and I can see that we've had some more crop up as well. So Andrew from Pike River Villas has asked about the cost effective, and we may have sort of answered some of these, but I think just sort of reaffirming what the answer is, I think, for everyone, just to get it set in our minds. So the cost effectiveness of adding off-grid solar with batteries on a site that is at the limit with Grid Connect. So it sounds like they're quite remote, and just wanting to understand about the cost effectiveness of that of off-grid solar with batteries. Can you shed any light on that, Peter?
Off-grid is certainly more expensive than being connected to the grid. It has additional issues with it, because if something happens with your system, you need to have backup. We're asked about, I generally suggest that there's not a black and white answer to this, but generally look at a way, can we design a solar system that will provide the extra that you need, but still have the grid there for your basic power supply as backup for when the grid is not providing what you need.
Yep. Yep. And I guess it sounds like, off grid and batteries and stuff, they're kind of the themes of the questions that we've come through so far. So I guess a little bit connected to that, Spear Creek Holiday Park, another obviously regionally based business, they have said due to the increasing regulations by SA Power on consumer solar products, should they be considering an off grid setup, so batteries plus solar? So you're saying potentially yes.
It's not black and white.
Yep.
I always prefer or recommend that they have the grid there to support what they're using. Yes, certainly design a system that is going to provide as much of your power as possible. And you have to have, and even with that, you're going to have some generator backup. You'll have battery. But if something goes wrong with any of that, it's just nice to know that you can go and turn the grid on. You might have it designed even that when you go to grid only, that certain things will become optional. Right? So you might not have everything working at the same rate.
Yep.
The things that you need will be there. The things that we can say, okay, you don't need, and that will vary side by side.
Yep. And on batteries, Anita from Food Builder has asked, what current battery options are you able to provide advice on the current battery options available for solar energy storage? And do you know what we could expect in the future in terms of where the battery thing is heading? I think batteries are the new craze in solar.
Yeah, I'd like $10 for everyone time I've been asked that question. The thing about solar, we've had so much promised to us over the years about increases, improvements to battery technology. I actually had shares in a lithium company in Australia for a while, who had their major source was overseas. And the big thing I can remember coming out at an annual report was that they didn't see the price of lithium decreasing. In fact, quite the opposite. The demand for lithium is being driven, apart from business, by motor vehicles. Motor vehicle manufacturers now are spending very little, if anything, on R&D for the petrol diesel driven vehicle. Everything's going into battery. And in fact, this company set up in an area which was sort of amongst a number of vehicle manufacturers, and they saw themselves selling most of their lithium to the vehicle companies and not to the other parts. So the demand for lithium is only going to grow. It's hard to see that changing. There are other technologies that they've been telling us about for a while, outside of lithium. Again, I've heard so many promises. We did see a little bit of a decrease in the price for commercial batteries, larger commercial batteries. So, when you start getting up 50, 100 kilowatt hour batteries, the smaller scale, when you get down to the Tesla, which is there are 13, so you might bank 2 or 3 of them together, their price went up, then they dropped it down, and they went put it back up again, and they've just dropped it again. It doesn't appear at this stage, sorry, that's the long way around, but it doesn't appear that the price of battery is going to have a large improvement in price anywhere near.
Okay. So it's not like just hold off and in 12 months time it's going to drop thousands of dollars. It's going to be a significant investment for some time.
Yeah. Back in the early days, when I joined this industry, I heard people saying the same thing about solar. Solar did go ahead, and I think that's where people are looking at batteries thinking the same thing will happen. I haven't heard anything that will do that.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about a battery, invest now. Don't worry about waiting, because it's probably not going to change in the short term.
Going back to my accounting background, when I look at solar to me just sells itself. The solar system will generally pay for itself in 3 to 5 years, depending on the type of billing you have through SA Power Networks. So Solar's just black and white. Where else can you put your money and get a 25, 30% return on capital? Guaranteed every year. It is, because solar panels have got a guarantee on their productivity. They've got warranties are long term. There's no way you can get that sort of return. Batteries are different, and batteries come down to what sort of return on investment are you happy with, and that varies. And so that's where it makes it a bit harder.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty that you bring to this conversation, Peter, is that you're passionate about solar, but you really understand how to really get the best out of this for your business and how to manage those costs and really realistic. Certainly it's not about, your perspective is very beneficial to our industry because you talk both languages, in a way that I think is quite reassuring and very practical and, certainly not pumping everyone down to the top end of the line, but around what's best for their business in a sustainability sense, both economically and environmentally over the longer term. So I just, Glenn and Amy from Minleton Caravan Park, I'm not sure if you had a question or if you just wanted to, you've placed a comment in the chat if you wanted to jump on and talk to Peter, or if you were just sharing that about the systems that you've installed. Did you guys want to jump in, or do you want me to take it? No? So Glenn and Amy have talked about, they're just sharing. Okay, great. Yeah, so they've had just had a 30 kilowatt system installed, 2 by 15 kilowatts. So yeah, I guess that really helps to understand the size and the scale of what solar panels look like. Does anyone else have any questions while we've got Peter here that they'd like to jump in on, or anything that they'd like to share about their solar experience? No, it's very quiet. Yes, thank you.
I couldn't find how to hand up the thing, so I just unmuted myself.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't want to get with my personal stuff. Nobody on there will be interested about my solar system here. Would there be a possibility, like after that, to contact you, Peter, to ask my questions about my solar? Well, yeah, I mean, I can share but I don't think people are interested what's happening. I have a huge solar system. However, I don't know enough about it, but I still pay so much money, especially during winter, and I want to know a bit more about why, what, and so I think that's probably just something I can ask you, Peter, privately, or.
Yeah, that's fine, certainly. Do you have my phone number?
No, I have nothing actually.
Okay.
From you at
That's
this
all right. We know that Peter is a very, whenever Peter goes anywhere, we always get asked for his contact details. So we will be sharing Peter's contact details with everyone post this. So, Anita, we can share yours back with Peter if you give us permission to send him your contact details.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
All right.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to, before I bring the final question that I've got on my list for Peter? Oh, okay. Yeah. So Amy, hello, Amy. Lovely to see you online. Once the consumption is determined, what is the process? And that's kind of my thing, I guess. Yeah. The next, I know what my consumption is. How do we, where do we start, Peter? What are the top steps that we're going to get solar? What do we need to do?
Okay, so once we have the consumption concern, I then design a solar system using the solar program that we've got, which will tell us what the output of the solar system will be. It breaks it down to months, so I'll tell you the average output monthly over a 12-month period. As I said earlier, it's a vast difference between January and June, and common what Anita just said then for people whose electricity bills will really spike in winter. So we have to take all that into consideration. We generally aim to have a system that is using about 70% of what it's producing. So the other 30% will be exported or could be used, say for a battery, but I won't buy into that right now. So we get to that point. Once we've done that, I would prepare a report and go through all of that you know, how we arrived at the size of the system, the consumption, the technology we're recommending. The technology I recommend, as I said, tells us what the system is doing down to the panel. Which this is what the price is. If that is something that we're interested in, we'll give them a contract with all of our terms and conditions. In the report, we would list all the warranties. The warranties that we have are the best in the market. They're very important to come with it because it is a manufactured product. And I'm not saying there are not problems with it, because they do happen. That's why we need those alerts to tell us when they happen. I read a report recently about BMW had a recall on their top of the range vehicles, a $500,000 car, and they had a recall on it. So everyone gets them. It's just when there's a problem, you want to know about it, because you can't. If there's a problem with a BMW, you can know because you're experienced driving. With your solar system, it can happen, and you don't know. So you want to know. You want to know it's going to be fixed.
Yep. Yep. And so then if I'm like, yep, I'm going to go with it, how long, like, what's the time frame are we talking about? You know, obviously there's the payment thing in terms of, and you've talked about finance being an option, obviously, for funding solar panels. And I think that that's the thing too, to really break down the thing that it's actually not uncommon to get finance to fund solar. So so there's that bit, but then how long, you know, like I've signed the contract, how long before I'll start soaking up those rays and, you know, cutting down my energy bill?
Yeah, that depends on the size of the system. So systems up to 30 kilowatts, as Anita said, she's got a 30 kilowatt. So systems up to 30 kilowatts also will go to SA Power Networks, and it's an automatic approval. So all solar systems have to be approved by SA Power Networks. If your system is bigger than 30 kilowatts, then it's a more complicated application process. There's a $4,000 application fee to start off with.
Wow.
Anything up to 30 kilowatts, no fee. Over 30 kilowatts, $4,000 fee. And then they go through their engineering, they check the impact it might have on the network, etc. That process with them would take about 4 weeks. We would normally then schedule to do the installation at the end of that period. So say it might be 6 weeks after we've lodged the application that we put that system in. 30 kilowatts would be availability. Sometimes we could get it in, not normally a week, but, you know, within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be able to get it done.
Wow. God, in today's day and age, we have to wait 12 to 18 months for a car, or, you know, just as long to get your bathroom renovated. This is really quick.
The only thing I have to say, at this time of the year, as we get towards the end of the year, it does become harder because everyone's trying to get in before the rebate reduces on the 1st of January. So we get quite a bottleneck, and sometimes, you know, we get to a point and say to people, sorry, we just can't do it this year. But, you know, I've got my team that I use to do it. There are other subcontractors out there, but you've got to be comfortable that there won't be any problems. See, I give a 10-year workmanship guarantee on what we do. I don't know any other company that does it, but I know that because the boys who do my work, I've been working with them for 8 years, and we don't have problems.
Yep.
So that's the truth. I mean, you do have minor problems because it's human nature, but we know about it, we fix it quickly. We don't have long-term problems because they were taking shortcuts or doing substandard work. Yeah,
great. And that's really great to know that, you know, if people want to potentially have something in where they're getting maximum kind of benefit at this point in time, with that sort of new year kicking over, that now's the time to be calling up Peter or making those decisions about in bringing in solar. I think that's pretty much it in terms of, is there anything else you sort of wanted to leave people with, as that's, you know, any kind of one key take home that you wanted them to think about for the rest of the day, Peter?
Look, the thing that I keep saying to people is that please remember what you pay for is what you get. And I see so many people that take shortcuts. The technology that we use, it's not the most expensive. I wouldn't work at tender all the time. We did LGA house in the city not that long ago, which was a tender. But it is a quality system that and the thing is that you will know. You're not going to be relying on someone saying to you, yeah, you're sure your system is fine, when you'll actually be able to see it. You'll be able to look at it. It will show you comparative output on a monthly basis going back years. I had a client yesterday we looked at, and we could look at what their system has done in January for the last 4 years. So we can see what's happening. If the system has a step backwards, you'll see it.
Oh, that's a lot better than keeping all those reams of bills of, you know, electricity power bills to try and have to weigh back and understand and then interpret and draw that analysis, which I think we are all trying to do as we try to think about how we can minimize cost and also to minimize impact. Thank you, Peter, for your expertise as always, and for sharing your knowledge and your passion as well for this topic. You know, I think as you know, we head into the future, this is to have solar or not. Obviously, there are different types of non-renewable energies coming in, but really to have solar or not is no longer starting to be do I or don't I, but actually how do I do it, where it's going to be the best for me and for my business and the most affordable and the best outcome, and you know, like in terms of the best value for money in terms of what I'm trying to achieve. So you know, sometimes it can be hard to sell the solar topic sort of discussion because it can be really daunting, but it's really something that our tourism industry and our businesses do really need to start feeling more informed and comfortable in understanding. And so the value that you bring to this conversation for our industry, and certainly too because you do understand the tourism industry, you know the different types of businesses that make up this industry, the different scale of businesses that make up this industry as well. So your ability to bespoke a solution or bespoke advice is really beneficial. So thank you very much, Peter. We will be sharing Peter's contact details with everyone so that you can give him a call and have him problem solve, provide guidance, but also too, if you're thinking, let's get those panels on the roof or not on the roof, I'm sure Peter can help you find other locations too if the roof's not going to work. And so, yeah, so we'll send out those details. We'll send out a link with the recording and anything else that we think is necessary to you as you head off into your days of business and all this beautiful, beautiful weather that we're currently having before it turns chilly again next week. Thank you, everyone. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. And thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Linda.